All right, last week we spoke a little bit about the purpose of education, and it was something that Martin Luther King Jr. had written while he was in Morehouse College in 1947, and we kind of read through a couple portions of it. We are in the phase 6 portion of our class, which is the next movement. So we're going to be dealing with the broad topics of Vietnam and civil rights. The reason why I combine these two is because they work together, and as we have seen and are going to see, it's hard to separate the Vietnam issue from civil rights. But before we go on with the purpose of education, I think it's important for me to reiterate my purpose for being in this classroom and for being your teacher, for creating this course. The purpose of this course is to raise the frequency and raise our consciousness toward the collective through the self to give us the tools necessary to engage in courageous conversations that will heal and build. And I use curriculum to do this, right? Martin Luther King Jr., when he talked about the purpose of education, he basically said that the purpose of education is to cultivate intelligence and moral character. So receiving a great education must include the two components. Even the press, the classroom, the platform, and the pulpit in many instances do not give us objective and unbiased truths to save man from the morass of propaganda is one of the chief aims of education. Today we're going to take a look at some things dealing with propaganda, and we're going to revisit our wave it strategy because it's important, my beloved, for us to understand the images and how sometimes images injure. And I like to use this phrase from a book. It's called Images That Injure. Oftentimes we don't understand some of these things that we're seeing, and so we emulate some of these things without knowing what exactly we're emulating. The purpose of an education, according to Martin Luther King, at least one of them, is for us to be able to discern the true from the false. We can weigh evidence. We can tell the real from the unreal. You can tell the fake people from the real people. You can tell the truth from the lies. Education helps us to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence, my beloveds, is not enough. Many people are smart, but if you're smart and you're an asshole, who cares? Intelligence plus character. That's the goal of a true education. So as we're going to come back to this. You're going to take a little quiz on this this close read a little bit later. All right, in class, we're going to bring it back. But first, let's take a look at the Newsela article that you all had done. Because we've transitioned through the 34th and the 36th presidents. We've read about LBJ's dilemma. And LBJ's dilemma was what? It was the Vietnam War, whether or not to go and fight in the Vietnam War. Well, as we read from our Newsela article, LBJ wasn't the only one with a decision. Muhammad Ali had a decision, right? When Muhammad Ali died on June 4th, 2016, he was treated universally as the giant. He was the embodiment, of the self-bestowed title, the greatest, itself a testament to his defiance, pride, and yes, greatness as a fighter. The former heavyweight boxing champion held the Olympic torch high in the 1996 Summer Games in Atlanta, representing the nation. He had been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, by President George W. Bush. So when he died, you would have thought everybody loved Muhammad Ali, right? Muhammad Ali is this great character, this great person. And yes, he was great, but he was not beloved, at least not until later on by most people. A half century earlier, he was a more controversial figure in the United States. He was a follower of the Nation of Islam. He changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. He denounced the Vietnam War in racial terms, and because of this, he summoned the wrath of many Americans, particularly white Americans, including some in high places who saw what he was doing was being unpatriotic. He said, why should they ask me to put on a uniform and go 10,000 miles from home and drop bombs and bullets on brown people in Vietnam, while so-called Negro people in Louisville are treated like dogs and denied simple human rights? He had vowed on religious grounds that he would not go to Vietnam. He ended up having to go to the Supreme Court. Cassius Clay versus the United States. President Lyndon B. Johnson faced considerable pressure, political pressure, with Ali, of what to do with Ali. He was convicted of willful refusal to submit to induction into the armed forces. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. His case, once again, went before the Supreme Court, and Ali won. On June 28, 1971, the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. So this boxer, who started boxing in 1960, had to abruptly stop, right? And he stopped not because he could not, but because he took a stand and did what he thought was the right thing, which was, in dealing with civil rights, how could he go and justify trying to bring democracy to another place when his own home didn't have it? He couldn't be treated right where he lived. And so he suffered the consequence of that decision, which was he couldn't box for 4 of the prime years of his life. But he still came back and fought 9 more years. So his whole boxing career started in 1960, ended in 1980. Parkinson's disease was caused in part by the repeated blows to his head. Had he been able to fight those 4 years, who knows would he have fought that long, right? But intelligence plus character is the goal of a true education. How are you seen? How do you want to be seen? See, many of you are freshmen. This is your first year in high school. And I like to say, the thing I like about teaching freshmen is that the basis, this foundation, is something that you'll take with you for the rest of your life. You'll build on it if you truly build on it, if you truly establish that foundation. The unfortunate part about teaching freshmen is that I can see when that foundation isn't being built, and I recognize how that young person is going to struggle in life. Not to say that they won't be successful, but there's going to be a struggle, an unneeded struggle, because we all struggle. How do we behave? Well, how we behave says something about us. Muhammad Ali behaved in a manner that says something about his character. It says that he is great. Behaved that way. Not just talk, not just intelligence, but he behaved that way. The images that we see, we worked with that strategy, Wave It. In a moment, I'm going to share with us the PowerPoint again. All right, I'm going to give us a couple minutes here as we transition. And I'm going to come back on and we'll begin with the Wave It and looking once again, focusing more so on these images, right? Today's lesson, I warn you now, you're going to see and hear about some offensive things, all right? The purpose is not to offend you or for you to feel offended, but the purpose is for you to understand truly why it is important that we get our education, that we become educated, and that we educate ourselves not just with the words that we read, but the things that we see. that we take our education seriously, not just with the things that we may be able to test on, but how we go through the tests of life. All right, quick review on this waive it. When we come to class, next time we have class, we will do a waive it activity dealing with political cartoons. This is not just for political cartoons, though. It is for analyzing images, the images that may injure, the images that injure. Brief review: political means of or relating to the government, and politics is how people get power, right? The methods that they use to get power. Political cartoon, we showed one on the left, and we said that it's an illustration that's designed to convey a social or political message. All right, the ones we're going to kind of look at today, more on that social side, images that we want to kind of focus on social, but it's also how people get power, right? Why should we study them? When we said we should study political cartoons because they can provide a modern day commentary for the issues of that time period. We also said that they use images in the same way as propaganda, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today, my beloveds, propaganda, and understanding the importance of it, right? The importance of, just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the importance of being able to understand, discern the true from the false, the real from the fake. But these things also serve as historical snapshots of society and public opinion. Remember that the first W means the words that are meaningful or present, and then we have the artist's perspective, then we have visual representations, their symbolism, the event or the inquiry, that is the question that the cartoon is posing if we don't know the historical time period that it's talking about, or if the cartoon isn't really talking about a specific historical time period, more like an issue, asking a question. And then what does it mean? What is it significant? Because of what? All right, then we practiced a little bit with this one right here. Right. All right. Now, here's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about public opinion. Who is the public? Is it just a crowd? Or is it people leading the next movement? Where are you in the public? Empty your cup to be fulfilled. See yourself as part of the whole. You are part of the public. What is public opinion? All right. It's the aggregation of views shared by a segment of society on issues of interest or concern. There are three major components: direction, intensity, and stability. All right. Why am I talking about this? Because there are images that when we see them, we form a public opinion. The public forms an opinion. When we see someone dressed a certain way, the public forms an opinion, right? When we hear somebody speak a certain way, the public forms an opinion. And when we think about the public, it can be a centralized body, right? Or it could be many separate entities. However, these people's attitudes lead public policy and the agenda. So the way people think as far as public opinion is concerned, officials craft policies that go along with public opinions. Sometimes public opinion is shaped by those policies. Sometimes the policies are shaped by people's opinions are influenced by several factors, including their family, friends, school, and work. Personal factors such as age, gender, race, and religion, but also by what we see. How are we entertained? Right? We're usually entertained by some form of mass media. When we think of mass media, a lot of times we think news. We think news outlets, but that's not necessarily true. TikTok is part of mass media. Instagram is part of mass media. Why? Because information is being disseminated to large audiences. So you all are participating in the mass media and a part of the mass media when you post things, right? You're part of disseminating this information. So when people talk about the mass media and its problems, they're talking about all of us. Now, the growth of this has really become largely because the old media, that print media, is now digital, and people can have platforms to where they can disseminate information digitally very quickly. There are common criticisms of the media. Most common is bias in reporting, bias in story selection, factual inaccuracy, being able to discern the true from the fake. 3 major ways the mass media impacts public opinion: bias. The second is symbolism. And the third is propaganda. Propaganda is a form of communication aimed at influencing the attitude of a group towards some cause by presenting one side of an argument. Civics review types of propaganda: testimonial, transfer. We like Usain Bolt because we like Usain Bolt. Maybe we'll like Puma, all right? Maybe we'll listen to his testimony because we like him. Testimonial transfer. Bandwagon. Australia, you've made the switch. Over 1 million Australians have already tried Oral-B toothpaste. So if you are Australian and you're using Crest, you haven't made the switch. You're not part of the bandwagon. So what you're going to do is, this is influencing you to go make the switch today. Join the bandwagon. Third type of propaganda, name calling. This one is very, very effective because it's one that people have been doing for the longest in their lives. If you go to any school playground, elementary school playground, you're going to hear children calling each other names, right? Well, adults do the same thing, and they're, governors and senators. They do the exact same thing. Why? Because they've been doing it for so long and realizing it's effective. If Democrats had any brains, they'd be Republicans. This is a form of propaganda used to peddle the book by Ann Coulter. What is she saying about Democrats? That they're stupid. Because if they were smart, they'd be Republicans. And then we have the fourth type, plain folks. Who is that in that picture? I don't know. Who am I? Nobody knows me. Oh, so let's go to Walmart. It's cool, right? Just like me. Then there's another type of plain folks where you have folks who really are famous trying to act like they're just doing ordinary things. That guy on the left in the red shirt is a famous actor, singer, probably some other stuff too, model Tyrese Gibson, right? He was in Fast and Furious. He was in Baby Boy. But there he's acting like he's just this normal guy with his Tommy Hilfiger in the middle of some, Hamptons summer with the American flag, chilling like everybody does during their normal spring outing. Nope, that's not normal. But plain folks trying to appeal to everybody's everyday life. And then the fifth one, glittering generalities. That's when you say a bunch of stuff that it doesn't really mean anything. The best coffee for the best you. Can it be proven that Starbucks coffee brings out the best in you? No, it cannot. It's a glittering generality. All right. Hold on. Pause here for a second, because I got to get this screen back. Yeah, there we go.
Just like the Snickers bar.
Hold on, say what?
Just like the Snickers bar.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the commercial.
That's right. You're right. That's a good connection. See, there you go. The next slide we're going to watch is going to be a video that's going to show some disturbing images. Remember, we're talking about images that injure and propaganda. And sometimes we can find ourselves in positions to where we are perpetuating stereotypes that we didn't know existed by the things that we do. All right, that's why young people are targeted, because if you start doing stuff when you're young and you don't understand the full ramifications of it, you're more likely to continue because you don't know the consequences of it. You don't see it that way. All right, you don't understand the history behind some of these things. So With that being said, this video is going to show some images of blackface.
As you may have heard, NBC Today host Megyn Kelly's show was canceled this past week following her on-air remarks expressing acceptance of blackface. It's a racist show business practice most of us thought was long gone. But as Maurice Dubois is about to tell us, blackface has a long history in our country. And we caution you, his report unavoidably includes many offensive and disturbing images.
It happens all too frequently, often at Halloween, but not exclusively.
They thought it was a joke, but it really just was not funny at all.
For example, 2 years ago in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Her daughter posted this photo of herself and a friend in blackface.
The two girls had no idea what blackface was or the history of it.
The history of blackface is long and complex and deeply ingrained in our culture.
Who was that lady I saw you with this afternoon?
That was no lady. That was my wife.
Even Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd blacked up.
Fantastic, isn't it?
For more than 100 years, white and then black performers wore dark makeup and created not only a popular theatrical form, but stereotypes that are still with us today.
This makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It does make me feel uncomfortable to talk about these things because they are incredibly disturbing and revolting.
Eric Lott, a professor at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, says blackface represents a strange mix of envy, fascination, desire, and fear.
Explain the fear part to me. What are these white performers, what are these white people afraid of?
They're afraid of black groups, mobs, rising up and taking the power.
Minstrel shows began in the 1830s, and white performers used burnt cork or later black grease paint. Minstrelsy eventually became the most popular form of entertainment in the country.
Ah, yes.
I asked Margot Jefferson, the Pulitzer Prize-winning critic, to look at some images from the New York Public Library.
The shininess of the black against the big white clown's mouth, the hat, the overlong tailcoat, mocking. It always gives me the jolt that racist history does. Blackface is so tied to comedy, to people enjoying themselves, to people having fun, that rattles you still more.
Well, Mr. Tambo, you seem to be enjoying yourself this evening.
Enjoying myself? I sure is.
White minstrel performers claim that what they did on stage was based on their perceptions of how black people lived.
Some of this came out of a genuine fascination with the music, the songs, the dances, the performance styles of black people.
But it's also where Jump Jim Crow was born, along with other characters depicted as lazy, lying, or buffoonish. Remember, this was all happening before the Civil War.
Slavery was all about creating visions, types, stereotypes of an entire race of people as subhuman in every way.
By the 1860s, African Americans began using blackface on stage.
Why on earth would a black performer put on blackface and demean him or herself?
Look, this is the 19th century. They had limited options. They were expected to.
Why?
Because it made the audiences comfortable. You can be fascinated, you can be excited, but you can always feel superior.
In effect, the black makeup on a black performer became a theatrical mask with many layers of meaning. Professor Eric Lott.
The mask, I think, says to white audiences, you have nothing to fear. Go ahead, enjoy yourself. To black audiences, I think any number of things might have been communicated, like, can you believe that these people are making me put on this mask so they will be entertained. In other words, there's a kind of winking to the black audience, but it gave black performers access to the stage.
One of the biggest black stars to come out of the minstrel tradition was Bert Williams, who wore blackface from vaudeville to Broadway.
It's clear that he was a genius of a performer.
But how did he reconcile performing in this demeaning art form?
He was very melancholy about it. He knew it was necessary for his career, as all other black performers knew it.
Minstrelsy on stage basically died out in the 1920s, but blackface lived on in the movies.
I'd walk a million miles for one of your smiles.
In 1927, Al Jolson starred in the pioneering talking picture The Jazz Singer, playing a young man who prefers singing popular music rather than his family's traditional Hebrew prayers.
West, but I know where the sunshine sets.
I don't want to look at it. What reaction do you get?
I totally understand.
Wait a minute. I don't like the way he said that.
In the Our Gang comedies of the 1930s, Spanky appeared in blackface.
Buckwheat, did you say Spanky was in a lot of trouble? Yes, sir.
The gag here is that the gang doesn't realize that that's Spanky in blackface until they actually see Buckwheat.
Hiya, Buckwheat. Hiya, Buckwheat.
So the gist of it is that you put blackface makeup on anyone and they become black.
And that's supposed to be hilarious.
And it's supposed to be really funny.
When he grows up.
And it goes on. During the golden age of the Hollywood musical, Judy Garland.
When he walks down the street, folks will say, pleased to meet Mr. Franklin D. Roosevelt Jones.
Bing Crosby.
That's why we celebrate this blessed February day. Abraham.
Fred Astaire, and many others, all blacked up. It's still in the culture.
It is too easy, I think, simply to dismiss the history of blackface as that racist stuff. And most of us are better than that. I don't think most of us are better than that. We are that. That's what we are.
Some people say in order to move forward, we need to put this stuff behind us, as painful, as just upsetting that it may be.
Well, any form of history that gets suppressed or repressed or erased out, it comes back to haunt. What has to happen now is a discussion, an acknowledgement of this charged, complicated, painful history.
The history of blackface, and that showed, the video showed some things, and I wanted to highlight a couple of things for you so you understand where I'm going with this. It was the most popular form of entertainment, all right, blackface. If we think about what the most popular form of entertainment is now, all right, where do the images come from? If we looked in and we saw the video, it talked about how having black people perform on stage, acting stupid, acting like they don't have any sense. It made the audience feel comfortable, right? It made them feel, even though it was entertaining to them, in the end of the day, they knew that they were always superior than the images, than the people that were there performing. So in 2021, when we see an image like this, somebody put this on shirts to wear, right? Arrest black babies. We have people who get upset about it, right? And rightfully so. Where does that come from? See, back in the days, as we were talking about this blackface, there was a camera, little Sambo. That's what they used to call the little, these black caricatures of people who seemed animalistic, almost like they weren't quite human, but they were entertaining. They were having a good time. It was fun to watch them, right? Little Sambo. And then we have Lil Wayne. Little, notice how that little Sambo is there, right? With the performers, the entertainers. That little. And then we have Lil Uzi Vert. The trap, my beloveds. We got to flip it and play our part. We got to understand what we're doing. We've gone from blackface to Tatt-Face. Right? Performers from blackface to Tatt-Face. You remember when we watched the GQVL, The Dark Days of Wilmington, when white supremacists overthrew the government because they would not be ruled by Negroes. The propaganda that they put forth, posters like this of menacing black people. We will not be subject to Negro rule because they're savages. Look at how the depiction shows the black man, the Negro, scaring the white folks at the bottom, right? Because he's nothing but a savage. Nothing but a savage. We've gone from blackface to Tatt-Face. If we were to look at a political cartoon, I told you that some of them have more social ramifications rather than political. And this is an example of one. Here you see that poster in the back that says, "Rap your life away." You have somebody who's been shot. There's a gun with the fresh smoke coming out of it. And you have this character with the, remember the words. We look at the words when we do political cartoons, right? Don't snitch. I didn't see nothing. The children watching. Somebody got murdered. And they say, what? I didn't see nothing. That's a good little hoe. Notice that little again, little Sambo. That's a good little hoe, right? Because that's not what young women aren't referred to as girls. Young boys aren't referred to as boys, right? There's these other names for them. Depicted as savages. And it's entertaining for us, right? It's entertaining for us to watch it. We love it. Don't we love it? Don't we love to listen to black people talking about killing each other? Like, don't you love it? It's entertaining, right? I love it. I love to hear it. Niggas killing niggas, right? And then when I go into a store, folks look at me and they think that I'm gonna kill them too, or they think that I'm down with that too. I love that, right? Don't you? It's the new rule of law. I love when I hear about, you know, like how my student Justin Morgan got killed, and how there were people who were sitting there watching it, and how they never came forth to say what happened. So his mother, still to this day, feels the pain of losing her son because they said, don't snitch, right? That was one of my students in Richmond, Virginia. We love it, don't we? Seeing black folks depicted as savages. It's interesting, my beloveds, how they tell you that you got to say the N-word. Don't say nigger, right? Can't say that. It's degrading. Yet you hear it on damn near every rap album that you've listened to. And we're gonna try to trick people into saying white folks can't say it, but white folks are the ones buying the music, so they hearing it more than anybody else, but they can't say it. The purpose of a true education is to give us intelligence and for us to be able to see, discern between the true and the false. Purpose of an education, my beloveds, is for us to be able to have courageous conversations so that we can heal and build. If you go to Canvas, you'll see there are quiz. The purpose of education quiz is there available to you, right? The PDF that you'll need for the questions, the excerpt of the article written by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is there for you. Don't snitch.